Good evening, everybody. So Rob Murray, I've actually known him for quite a few years. I used to be an ISM-Philadelphia member. Louder? Okay. So he is a supply chain consultant and high performance coach focused on building consistently high quality relationships with business partners. He's a master networker, having made connections that generated millions of dollars in savings, helped shape careers, and launched businesses as large as 200 million. He coaches business owners and executives to perform their best and really succeed at achieving their goals. He helps companies transform their supply chains, helping his last client set up international sourcing offices and upgrade their supply chain infrastructure to get hundreds of millions of dollars in funding to continue rapid growth. In the past year, he's attended dozens of networking events and learned what works and what doesn't. So please welcome Rob Murray.
Thanks, Danielle. Great introduction. So I've been watching you guys, and I'm not sure that you really need a lot of help in networking, because from what I can tell, you guys are doing a really good job of it already. But I'm going to talk about some of the nuances that I found, maybe some of the things that when I started out networking early in my career, I kind of wished that somebody had told me about. And part of the thing that I'm looking for is helping people to adjust their attitude towards networking so it's not one of those things that's an obligation. A lot of people come, particularly if you're in business development or if you're looking for a job, they come to the networking event because they're thinking, oh, I've got to do this. I've got to get business. I've got to go get another job. And they're coming from a place of being particularly needy and really wanting help. And that's one of the most difficult places to come from, because when you're networking from that place, you're not really putting your attention on the people that you're networking with. You're thinking about what it is that you can get from the event. And that really turns it from being something that could be kind of a fun and joyous thing to being something that becomes an obligation that you really don't like very much. So, a quick question, and maybe you guys can do this because I can tell you're good. A lot of you are really good already. But what do you think the difference is? So if you're looking at a group of people who are networking and they're not doing it well, you probably notice those people. They're the people that are sitting kind of on the edges of the room. They're checking out their phone. They're looking a little bit bored. They're hanging down by the food table. And they're not really that interested in what's going on. They're not fully engaged with people. But then sometimes you look at the people who you consider to be a master networker and they're really good, and they walk out of a situation like this with actual appointments with people, with actual connections that they're continuing to have after the networking event occurs. What's the difference about them? And one of the things that I observed, if I just started describing what it is, they're in the middle of things. They're fully engaged. When they're talking to people, they're present with the people that they're talking to. They're interested. They're asking really good questions of each other. And they're enjoying themselves. I mean, you could tell it in people's body language that they're actually enjoying themselves and they're having fun and they're really in the mix of things, so to speak. So what I'm going to do is share some of the things that I've learned from a lot of the networking events that I've been attending and a lot of ones that have worked really well and creating some of the lasting relationships. What are some of the differences that caused that little shift? And it was kind of funny because I didn't realize I was good at networking. Like, I don't even know if I like the term master networker particularly. But the reason I'm here is because of networking. I was close friends with Dave Panzera, who was the former. Crank it up? Yeah, I could talk more loudly or more directly into the microphone. Can you hear? Okay, cool. Sure, I'll just have to remember to do this. Whoa. But anyway, I was working with Dave Panzera, and he and I became friends, and he's one of the people who I've kept in touch with over the years, and I'm now bi-coastal, not bipolar, bi-coastal. I'm living here in Royersford, and then I also have a place out in California, and I'm spending my time between the two. And whenever I come out, I will always look up Dave, and I'll say, hey Dave, let's go to dinner. And we're just really sharing some interesting stories, and I'm asking him how things are going at the ISM and how I can help and what he's up to. And because of that, when he thought about what would be the most useful for people in this particular event, a mini event where we're pulling together 5 of the premier supply chain organizations within the area, what would be useful to them? And he said, well, let's do a networking event and let's have somebody speak on the topic of networking. And he thought, who do I know that's really good at networking? It's like, Rob, you want to come and do this? I'm like, okay. Yeah, definitely we'll come and do this, because this is something that's giving back and adding value to the organization. So that's why I'm here. Literally, I'm here because of networking and having that long-term, deep relationship with Dave. So really what I'm trying to do is to give all of you guys some of the points about networking that makes that difference. You know, why would people say you're good at networking versus somebody who's not good at networking? So one of the things I'm going to do is challenge people for the remainder of this event. And I've seen a lot of you guys doing good things already, but I'll challenge you a little bit more. Because we're 5 different organizations, try to find somebody at this networking event who you have not yet connected with, and go up and start talking to them. And don't just talk to the same people, because that's kind of where the magic happens. So the challenge is this: for each one of you, I'd like you to walk out of this event with one person at least that you will not only keep in touch with, but you're going to take them out to lunch, or you're going to go out to a coffee with them and deepen the relationship. One of the things that I found a lot in my networking is that the magic never occurs on the first conversation. You just get past that stage where people are talking about what do you do, what are you interested in. It's not really a true relationship. And as you start having additional conversations, you get the nuances of people, and you really start understanding what that person's about. Not just what they do from a business standpoint, but also what they really care about, what their values are, what they're interested in. And that's when you start having those magical networking interactions with each other. So that's the challenge, to start networking with somebody who you have not yet had a conversation with. So one of the things that I tend to do, and this is kind of a new motto for me, but this is on the high performance coaching side, my new motto is, that scares me a little bit, so yes. And I've said that a few times, and whenever I do it, it's like, whoa, growth goes through the roof when I'm doing that. So somebody says, hey Rob, do you want to be in my podcast? And I'm going to do it in 2 days. Yes, I'll do that. Why did I do that for? That's scary. But then I do it, and it's amazing, and it works out really well. You know, Dave asking me to come out and give this talk, and you may or may not know I'm not a professional speaker. But yes, this is a period of growth. This is a great opportunity, and it's a chance to give back and provide value to all of you. So yes, to do those things. So if anybody has any hesitation, and I'll look at 1 or 2 people who told me that they're a little bit scared to network, just say yes in that situation to connecting with somebody that you don't know, because that's where that magic will really occur. So what are some of the tips that I have found that are really magical in it? So one of the things that I've found in networking is that when you ask better questions, the conversation is much more interesting. And we've all heard the conversations that we have where people are saying, what do you do? Where are you from? What job do you work for? What company do you work for? It's kind of interesting. I'm not saying that those questions are bad questions, but they're the standard questions. They're not that really that interesting. So I'm going to give you a couple of additional questions that you can ask that really shift the way networking is done. And if you have something to write with, great, you can write it down. If not, try to commit to memory one or two of your favorite topics. So one of the questions that I love to ask is, what's happening in your life right now that you're really excited about? So what's happening in your life right now that you're really excited about? And there's something very interesting and a little bit nuanced about that question, because as soon as you ask it, the person's connecting with what they're happy about, what they're excited about, what they're feeling positive about. And in that feeling of being positive, you are the one that asked that question. They're connecting that feeling of happiness and positivity and excitement with you suddenly. So it's kind of a magical thing. And then the second question that I love to ask people is, of all the things that you're working on right now, where do you need some help? Or what can I help you with? And that's one of those interesting questions too, because in a networking event, how often do you hear somebody asking that question? Where do you need help right now? It's like, well, I don't know you, what do you mean? And usually when I've asked that question in situations like that, the person's like, nobody's asked me that. That's an interesting question. And then they think, the conversation goes on a little bit longer, and then they go, you know what? I do need help in this area. I was looking to connect with, and then they start giving me an example of what it is that they're looking for. Again, it makes you stand out in a networking situation because you're connecting with something that's really of value to them, and it's not something that's particularly common. Another question that I love to ask is, what kind of connections are you trying to make? So particularly at this type of an event, and it's interesting because I've done it already in this, and it's just something that comes naturally, and I don't even realize I'm doing it, but I'm talking to somebody who's working in the legal field in the transportation industry, and I know somebody who's an expert in transportation. Hey, you should talk to this person. Let's connect the two of you together. That adds value to both parties, and that's really something that people don't always take the time to do, but when you do it, it's really appreciated and really remembered. Another question, and this gets a little bit more into the core of what people do, that who they are, not just what they're doing from a work standpoint, but the question is, what are you passionate about right now? And that lets you know, generally when you ask the question that way, people are thinking something that's not work, okay? Now it'd be nice, sometimes people are passionate about work, and if that's the case, then that's great. I love people who are fully engaged and love their jobs. Usually they'll say something about, my son just joined a soccer team, or I'm really excited about this marathon that I'm training for right now. They'll tell them a little bit something personal about themselves that's very interesting, and then you get to know the person and who they really are. And then the last question is, how did you end up connecting with this event? What did you come for? What are you interested in getting out of this event? And when you ask that question again, it's putting people into their own world. It's adding value to them. And one of the things that I have found is that people become more interested in you when you're expressing an interest in them. It's just a natural inclination. And the fact that you're asking questions, you'll notice all of these questions are focused on them. They're not questions that are focused on steering people in the direction of something that you want to sell or something that you're looking for or some help that you need. They're really focused on the individual that you're talking with. And that's the thing that makes the difference between master networking and just the standard, we're walking around type networking type thing. So I had an interesting one when I was, just reminded me of this. I was at a job interview once, and I was very interested in the company, and I came up with a whole bunch of questions. Well, I walked out of that interview, and the person said, you really get our company. You really seem to understand what our needs are. And I thought back, and it's like, you know what? I just asked them questions for 45 minutes, and they asked me questions for 5 minutes. But they thought I understood them because I was asking good questions and I was really interested in them. And that just shows the power of being interested in other people at a real deep level. So, and I think one of the other things that's super important in networking is how you're showing up. Are you showing up with good energy? Are you fully present with the people? Are you engaged with them? A lot of times people's body language gives themselves away, and we all know, and we've heard this a lot of times, what people say is only a small percentage of the information that people get, and it's really how you're showing up to the networking event. And you can say all the right things, but think, I really hate the idea that I'm here and I don't want to be here anymore. And people will pick up on that. So that's one of the things, just to kind of monitor what's going on in your mind as you're networking. So let me give you a couple of the master networking working tips that I just wrote down as I was reverse engineering. People were like, well, what are you doing that's different? And I was like, I don't know, let me think about it. One of the things is to really and truly practice presence with people. So like right now, this is a great group, everybody's paying attention, I'm with you, I'm looking at you, I'm fully present. And now you can see I disengaged, I looked off for a second, and you could feel it. It's like the energy drops, I lose you. And what happens a lot of times in events is that there's stuff going on in your head. You're thinking about what you're gonna say next, you disengage. You're thinking about that person that you see over the shoulder of the person that you're talking to, that you'd really rather be talking to, and you disengage. And because of that disengagement, you miss the magic of the opportunity of really being there with the person that's right there in front of you. And you won't hear some of the nuances of things that might be worth following up on. So one of the things that I try to think about when I'm in a networking situation is just constantly be thinking, how can I add value to this person? What is it that they really need to hear right now? And just keep running that through my mind over and over and over again, so that I'm really thinking about, this person is magical, they're amazing in some way, and how can I add value to them? And with that mindset, then some of the things happen that really open up great opportunities with people. The framework that's helpful is to be more interested than interesting. So this is something else just to remember, because it's easy to remember. Be more interested than interesting. And what does that mean? That if you're trying to be interesting to people, then it's all about your stuff. If you're trying to be interested in them, then it's about them. And it becomes one of those things that's a deeper, better relationship. And it's essential to be transparent and real. One of the things that I used to do, particularly when I was younger, and I think this is, you want to show up as who you think people want you to be. So I'm going to walk in, I'm the slick person, and I'm an executive at the company, and I've got my stuff figured out, which is great, but people don't connect with people who are just coming in and like, oh, hello, I'm here, I'm super, you should buy from me. I mean, we've heard that before. That's what we're getting assaulted with all the time in commercials. People love real. So you could have your business figured out, but you could be having a problem at home. You could be in a situation where you're thinking that your job may be threatened. Be real about that. This is the type of networking situation where people can help you. So if you go in and you start acting in a situation like this, particularly in an industry event where everybody's in the supply chain field, and you're saying, oh, I got my stuff, I'm successful, I'm the executive, I'm making all this money, whatever, that leaves one impression, which ends the conversation. But if you say, you know what, I've had a really, really good career, but I'm kind of not concerned that my job may not be around for in a couple of months. That person now sees you as being real and authentic and connects with you on a deeper level, and they may be the person that can help you just because you were real and transparent in that situation. And the thing that happens is that when you connect with people deeply, you create this value loop that really continues to add more and more value to people. So I'm going to give you an example of one of those that happened with me. And one of them sitting right in front of us, Tony, you could raise your hand, say hi, Tony. So Tony and I connected. So I was actually at a period when I was looking for a job, and Tony was having a conversation with a business associate, and in that conversation I heard him talking about transportation and logistics. So as they finished meal, I didn't interrupt their meal, would have been a little bold, but anyway, I was bold anyway. I walked up to him as they were leaving the restaurant and I said, "Hey Tony, can I ask where you work and what are you doing? Your conversation was interesting. That's the field that I was in." So we started a conversation and he said, "You know, I really appreciate somebody who would do something like that and would be bold enough to come up in a restaurant and talk to people, because not everyone will do that." He invited me to an event, a networking event that he was having a couple of days later, which was really, really helpful to me, and we started a relationship. Well, he actually, in his company, invited me to an interview a couple of months later, which was extremely valuable to me. And then as I moved on in my career, I remembered Tony being somebody who was a true expert in logistics. And I was working for a company who was renegotiating our UPS and FedEx contracts. And in the process of doing that, I called Tony up and I said, "Hey Tony, you know, here's what I'm doing. I might need some help. Can you help with that?" He said, "Rob, I have just the guy. I have somebody who actually worked at UPS, knows their pricing algorithms, knows the backside of what's happening." So we hired him for my new company. And in the process, he saved us $550,000 on a $3.5 million spend on our UPS small pack as we negotiated the deal. And I'm quite sure that I would not have saved that much money myself had I not had that inside knowledge. But again, it was something that was years later. It was great for Tony, it was great for me. We both benefited massively from the value of that. Then I was starting to do some research for what would be most useful for the people in this group. So I asked Dave Panzera, the president of the ISM, or former president, Danielle, thank you, and he said, "Yeah, I'll connect you with a couple of people." And then Gina, is Gina here today? Not here yet? Oh, Gina, hey, there you go. So he gave me Gina's name, and I've just talked to her on the phone, as you could tell by not recognizing her. And so he said, "Reach out to Gina. She's the VP of programs at CSCMP, and she'll give you some information." And she was massively helpful in telling me what people might want to hear at this particular event. So in this situation, I said, "Let's do it for real. Let's practice this." So I said, "For real, what do you need help with right now? What are you working on? What do you need help with?" And she said, "Well, of course, I'm responsible for saving freights at VWR, and that's a very, that's the hot button always in the organization." I said, "I got just the guy." So I connected her with Tony. Tony and Gina stepped up right away, took very fast action in that. And I don't know what'll happen, but I mean, I'd love to hear, a year from now that Gina saved $1 million or $2 million on her freight spend as a result of it. Tony got a new client. Gina has a promotion. I mean, who knows? But just by me connecting the two of them adds value to everybody all the way around. And that's what I'm considering like the exponential value loop. That's really how it's done. And I think that's the importance, that the magic starts happening as you continue to really care about the people and think in terms of how you can add the maximum levels of value to each one of the people, and just keep doing it, deepening the relationships, having additional conversations, and really thinking in terms of how can I contribute instead of how can I get? And who knows where it will go from there. So I'm expecting that some magic is going to happen at the rest of this event from the couple of little tips that I've shared with you. And I would love to follow up with everybody. One of the things that I did, as you can tell, I have a lot of stuff, and I probably have an hour's worth of material and only 15 or 20 minutes to talk, or only one more minute to talk. So what I did was I wrote out a transcript of this particular speech. So what I'd love to do, there's a couple of sign-up sheets around the room, and if you want to get the entire speech with all the other tips that I didn't have time to share with you, please sign up, or please walk up to me. There you go. We got it walking around. This is perfect. And I would love to stay connected with everybody. And if you do sign up on this and say you're interested, not only will I send the transcript, but I'll also send you a sample of a networking tracker that I use, where I put down where people need help and what they can help with, so we can start marrying those things up. If you're doing this right, you really can't remember all the people that you're forming these relationships with, and this is the opportunity to do that. So I would love to connect with you. And I'm done.
Round of applause. All right. This is for you. Thank you very much.